All right, here we are again. This is an opinion piece from the Washington Post. And this is probably one of the worst opinions I think I've ever seen in my life.
I haven't seen it yet.
And I thought I just had to share it with you. The opinion is, comedians are struggling to parody Biden. Let's hope this doesn't last.
They can't, they're like, he's handsome, he's smart, he's always on the ball. We got nothing.
This opinion is by some dude named Richard Zoglin.
What probably happened was that he watched like modern like Saturday Night Live and he was like, they aren't making fun of Biden. You know why? It's because they're struggling.
It states, a sense of unease is starting to build. The late night talk show hosts, nearly all of whom had mastered at least a rough approximation of Trump speak, are moving on to lesser targets such as Ted Cruz and Mitch McConnell. Okay.
Mitch McConnell isn't even like, he'll probably guest on their show soon enough anyways.
It starts to get pretty bad after. I don't think we're going to read this whole thing because, by the way, this goes on for paragraph after paragraph after paragraph. It's so long. So we're going to kind of just go over it very generally. The first crisis of the Biden administration could be looming. America may have a president, the first in generations, who is impervious to impressionists.
He is so perfect. How is he so perfect? Oh, just look at him. His eyes, they're perfect. His hair, it's perfect. His mind, the mind of this man, it's perfect. There's nothing you can touch him with. He doesn't even have a belly button. He's so perfect. His stomach is smooth. Perfection, his gluteus. Look at the two orbs. They're perfect. There's nothing you can possibly make fun of because he's just so perfect. Don't you get it? He's perfect.
One could say he's seamless.
He has no seam.
Oh, they've tried. CNN or SNL has cycled through a revolving door of Biden impersonators. Woody Harrelson took over in the early days of the 2020 primaries, but he offered little more than a set of gleaming white teeth. Jim Carrey's manic energy was entertaining, but seemed all wrong for a 78-year-old candidate whose prime challenge was fending off charges that he'd lost a step.
Like, you literally just can have the man himself walk on stage. I guess you could say the same thing about Trump, but like all you have to do is like watch him for 10 seconds and just be like, oh, I get it. He's an old man who can't remember anything. Like, it writes itself. You don't even need a comedian. Frankly, my only assumption is that these so-called quote-unquote comedians are retarded.
SNL cast member Alex Moffat is the show's latest Biden, but after one appearance, he seems to be missing in action. The late-night comics have barely tried. And where are the YouTube parodies? This cannot be good for the country. I think this guy's trolling a little bit. If this guy is serious...
How is this like... How do you write this and go, this is correct. I'm writing this on my paper and it is correct.
Like, if this guy's trolling, fine, but the fact that he's making money off of this. This is what he gets paid to do.
He's like crying as he writes it.
Supposed to be news,
he's like, these poor comedian.
If you want to just write stupid, nonsensical, funny stuff, work for The Onion.
Yeah.
Or something like that. This is officially Washington Post. Presidential impressions, it's worth remembering, are a relatively new phenomenon on the American scene. Before radio, most people didn't even know what their presidents sounded like. Humorist Will Rogers gamely made a couple of attempts on radio with Calvin Coolidge in 1928 and FDR in 1934. But he rushed to explain afterward that he meant no disrespect. And trying to imagine an impressionist mimicking Dwight D. Eisenhower is about as hard as trying to imagine, well, Dwight D. Eisenhower's presidency.
What? Oh my gosh. I zoned out pretty hard on that one. How do you write this and think that you're making any sort of logical point
that you deserve to get paid for?
How do you how do you come to this conclusion? And he's sort of way
Okay, he goes through
Let's
more.
get into the history of it. Let me tell you something. Like, everybody's always made fun of presidents, but nobody used to know what they sound like. Now, here we got Biden, a great man, a great, great man. And we know what he sounds like. Like, all the pieces fit together. Yet we are struggling. These comedians are struggling, I tell you, to do a proper, how do you say, impression. I just don't get it. I'm gonna spend 10 hours a day for 3 months writing my little paragraph on why, and I still don't get it.
Well, that's a good point.
Yeah, I thought so.
This goes on for several paragraphs more, going through the rough history of parodies of Nixon, especially David Fry's in the 1960s and 70s, seemed to grow darker and more baroque as the president's Watergate troubles mounted, solidifying the public's view of Nixon's slipperiness and paranoia. And the nonstop lampooning of Trump surely helped to reinforce, for all but his MAGA base, the true weirdness of the man in the White House.
There's no way this guy's like being ironic. It's too dumb. Like, you can't make this up.
The
You have
true
to-
weirdness.
Nobody realized. Like, did they even notice that his hair was sort of like flipped to one side and kind of weird? I doubt they even noticed. These Trump people look at him and they think, that's the face of God. That's what they think. I know it because I can see straight into their brains. I can see it. I can see what you're thinking, especially if you got a red hat that says MAGA on it. Let me tell you.
That's what these people act like. Somebody needs to take these people over their knee and go, listen.
It's funny that he can't admit
That he's an
like,
idiot.
well, no, that like Trump's like bad. Like,
He's like, I'm not going to say
like
he's
I don't-
bad,
like all
but
the,
he's just frankly ridiculous.
parodying Nixon was like, you know, darker, baroque, troubles mountain, slipperiness and paranoia. But for Trump, equally speaking, was weird.
Trump was just such a weird guy, and like nobody seemed to notice on his team.
Like,
How did they not see it? They didn't notice it. Like, he looks a little bit weird. I just go like, it's just weird. They're just so blind. And these poor comedians that can't make a joke about Biden, and you know why? It's not because we're trying to prop up this demented piece of cardboard. It's because there's nothing to make fun of because he's just so perfect. The country's falling apart, and frankly, it's these comedians who can't parody Biden's fault.
yet impressions don't have to be mean. They can help humanize a president, knocking him off his pedestal, sanding the rough edges. The spoof of Ronald Reagan's doddering geniality, sorry. Like the classic SNL bit in which Phil Hartman's bumbling Reagan becomes a laser-focused micromanager once the reporters are out of the room, probably helped distract from the crueler aspects of his conservative policies.
Reagan's known for his cruelty. Don't you know he kept people chained up in his basement that he whipped with a sword?
Derek, wait, here comes the Bill Clinton sympathizer
Oh
bit.
gosh.
Impressionist portraits of Bill Clinton as a fast food loving, quote, feel your pain good old boy may have well helped him weather the scandals and impeachment ordeal better than he might have otherwise.
We really gotta like help him out, you know, because Bill Clinton, he's just such a kind soul. And frankly, just because like what did he do? What did he do? He just like looked at somebody the wrong way. I guess that's all I heard. I'm just glad that people presented him as the kind McDonald's eating fella that he is.
But Biden, so far, has been impregnable.
Impregnated?
I don't think he can be impregnated because he's a man. The voice is too bland and devoid of obvious quirks. And beyond
There's no like quirks. He doesn't have any quirks.
Wait,
he just
says,
talks so clearly.
and beyond the occasional, come on, man, his conversational manner too muted and self-effacing to give the parodists much to work with. Trump supporters and Fox News pundits would undoubtedly attribute this to the media's liberal bias. And to be sure, Trump was viewed by the, quote, parentheses, mostly liberal satirists. Is that how you say satirists? Satirists, whatever, satirists. Not just an irresistible comic target, but also as a dire threat to the nation. Biden's pleasantly boring presidency has been a welcome return to normality, but hardly great material for parody. Let's hope that changes. Can we really survive 4 years with a president who doesn't have a vivid enough profile to make a cold open of Saturday Night Live? Can't Joe Biden, in between planning for immigration reform and an infrastructure bill, offer a new conversational tick or catchphrase? Quote, malarkey went out with the debate season. A verbal gaffe would be helpful, but Biden has set a modern record for getting this far into his presidency without holding a press briefing. Impressionists need something to latch onto. It's either that or another 4 years of Dwight D. Eisenhower. Come on, man, your legacy is at stake. And that's the end. Do you want me to read over that ending bit again?
Like, should we do a little like Joe Biden sketch for this guy? Like, be like, because Joe Biden, that silver-tongued little serpent, because he's just so smooth, so perfect in every way. No gaffes. He doesn't even speak. He's so perfect. At the risk of embarrassing ourselves by just walking in and saying hello and being boring as heck. Maybe we should do a little bit just for the people at home. Here, I'll play the role of Biden, and you'll play the role of the audience.
Okay, I'm the audience, and Derek is Biden. We're going to do a comedy Biden skit.
Here's your opening, Saturday Night Live. Hey, man, come on, man. Come on,
I can impersonate Biden. Watch this.
I mean, I guess that's not really an impersonation because he's just so beautiful, that man. I mean, what is there to make fun of? I mean, he does have long donkey nipples.